Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Gananam Tva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavinamupamashravastamam Jyestarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatha Anashunvanno Divissedasadanam Prano Devi Saraswati Vaje Virvajinevati Dinama Mitrayavadho Ganeshaya Namaha Saraswatyai Namaha Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalar Spatikhatrudhim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Ayagneevamupasmahe Yasya Tvarada Vakradhyaya Parishatya Parashatham Vignam Nignam Tisatatam Vishwashremam Tamashraye Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Bisaje Bhavaroginaha Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurthaye Namaha Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Sai Ishwararphanamastu Prapanna Parijathaya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Geethamrutadhe Namaha Sarvopanishad Gao Doktha Gopalanandanaha Bharto Vatsau Sudhir Bhoktha Dugdha Geethamrutat Mahat Vasudeva Sutham Devam Kamsa Chanuramadhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vandhe Jagatgurum Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Krishnarphanamastu Tat Sat Namo Namaha Suswagatam. Thank you to all who have joined me today to look at the continuity of the conversation between the Purusha, Krishna, and the Manusha, Arjuna, so as to give Arjuna enough knowledge to turn him around so that he can become from Manusha to the level of Purusha, right? So technically, if we listen to what has been said or what has been handed down, what has been given, and we follow suit, then there is no question of Manushas attaining the capacity to become the Purushas. But if we, listen one side and it comes out the other side, and then in the middle it's hollow, then, Punarjanmaha, again birth, again death, you go, you get, continuously you are stuck in this cycle of birth and death until you use that jnanam or jnana, wisdom, to cull that cycle, right? So we are going back to the battlefield where Krishna is talking to Arjuna, right? Last week we looked at chapters 5 and 6. Today we're looking at chapters 7 and 8. Chapter 7 is called Knowledge of the Absolute. Knowledge of the Absolute. Absolute is permanent, right? Nitya, Anitya, like that. It's called Jnana Vijnana Yoga, right? Not a very big chapter, it's about 30 verses. And in these 30 verses, Krishna is telling Arjuna how to get in touch with the knowledge of the Absolute. But equally, he's saying there are two sides to the coin, right? One side is called Maya. The other side is called knowledge of the Absolute. Unless you are able to turn Maya around, you are not going to be able to attack the knowledge of the absolute. Beautifully you said it, right? So one side is Maya. First, learn to overcome the Maya, right? And I'll give you the description or the definition of what Maya is, okay? So let's look at Jnana Vijnana Yoga. Jnana Vijnana. Jnana is, knowledge. Vijnana is science, beyond science, knowledge beyond science. That means knowledge beyond the materialistic understandings that man is subject to, that man is living in, right? So there are a few topics that Krishna covers in chapter 7, right? In the 30 verses, he talks about the knowledge of God and the glory of that knowledge of God before he goes on to the nature of God, the nature of the supreme absolute, right? Complete, with that completeness. Then he talks about the cause of samsara, why people are born and caught in the cycle of samsara. Then he talks about bhakti. Bhakti as a remedy for samsara. See? Whenever he talks about a problem, the next thing he does, he gives a solution to the problem, right? So all of life's solution, I've said this before and I'm merely repeating, all of life's problem you can find in the Bhagavad Gita, and in the same place you find the problem, there will also be a solution to that problem given. It's like what he's doing. Then he starts with bhakti, then he talks about satkama bhakti, which is devotion for materialistic ends. They are also called arthas. And then he talks about nishkama bhakti, which is devotion for spiritual end. Sakama bhakti, devotion for materialistic ends. Nishkama bhakti, devotion for spiritualistic ends, right? And because this is talking about the Sadguna Ishwaram, which is the Jnanam, and the Nirguna Ishwaram, which is Vijnanam, the science of knowing the absolute, through form. Satguna is that which has attributes or forms, and Nirguna is that which does not have any attributes or forms. So by using the one with the form, you reach the one with the form or without the form, the absolute, the formless. Hence, because it's talking about Sadguna Ishvara, which is Jnanam, and Nirguna Ishvara, which is Vijnanam, this is called Jnana Vijnana Yoga chapter. Okay. Right. So he starts by telling Arjuna what are the material and spiritual dimensions of God's energy. See, Arjuna, at that moment in time, he's just beginning to come out of his confusion, right? And then Krishna is just, giving, right? So Krishna explains, it's all like beats strung on one single string, right? I am the string and everybody is connected to me through that string, right? The Atma and the Paramatma. Paramatma is the string, right? That connects all the Atmas together. So everything comes from me, one after the other. The entire creation began with me and it dissolves into me and it again comes out of me, right? But in between this cycle of coming and going and coming and going, Maya is also inside. Right? And it's very difficult for people to actually tack onto that absolute supreme unless they have really got over Maya, right? They have to cross Maya. Then he talks about 4 kinds of people who engage in his devotion and 4 kinds of people who don't engage in a devotion or don't surrender to him. 4 kinds of people who surrender and 4 kinds of people who don't surrender, right? We'll go into this in a short while. He says, those people who worship me with knowledge in their mind and use the intellect that comes out of the knowledge in order to merge with me or make an attempt to merge with me, they are the most nearest and dearest to me. But even in that category of people, he's telling Arjuna, even in that category of people, because Arjuna thinks he's the closest thing to Krishna, and Krishna is telling, even that category of people who are nearest and dearest to me, there are some who are deluded by material desires and surrender to things which only bestow upon them temporary materialistic prosperity. So Arjuna, the worthiest object of devotion is the attainment of the Almighty Himself. This is what Krishna is telling. You must understand one thing, right? Whatever we are looking at now, whatever we are covering, whatever I am telling you is exactly what Krishna said to Arjuna through the Gita. That is the Lord, the Purusha, telling the Manusha, hey, This is what you must do. So it is very clear. Do we need something else? And Swami has also repeated this in different ways in many places at many occasions. Right? So why do we need that? He says, Ekam Sat, and that's me. I am the ultimate truth and the highest authority. Right? I have one attribute that spreads into thousands and thousands of attributes. So I am omnipotent, I am omnipresent, and I am omniscient, all in one. But you cannot appreciate me because my yoga maya is hiding this imperishable nature and eternal divinity. That form you cannot see because of yoga maya. Unless you transcend this yoga of the maya, then you can see me. Arjuna says, how do I do that? Krishna says, surrender, sharanagati. Those devotees who surrender to me and take shelter receive the divine knowledge. He said, Arjuna, what you are getting now? Because you surrendered, you accepted me as your guru. Now I'm telling you, right? Surrender the self. So what do you surrender? You don't just surrender physically, right? You have to surrender physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. 4 levels of surrender. Which level of surrender are you at now with your guru? That's what you need to ask, right? And that's where karma comes in, right? So a lot of people, I mean, once in Cambridge, I spoke about this, and someone asked me a question. So it's very easy. All you do is surrender, and Krishna will look after. I said, nah, that's where you're wrong. You know, this is where the confusion is. I said, he will endow you with the divine knowledge and the wisdom, but you need to exercise sufficient intellectual discretion to practice your thoughts, to curtail your will, to curtail your desire, and to exercise and sharpen that wisdom that only sees one-pointed devotion to him and him alone. Then yes, he will look after. You know, just the act of surrendering doesn't mean, you know, all your karmas are washed. Even he himself, when he comes down, yeah, he attracts karma because he is engaging with everybody. Therefore, some exposure to karma is inevitable. Even he, the Purusha. So what more you, Manusha, right? So your karma directly responds to your thoughts. I said to you before, your thoughts become desires, right, manifest into actions. Actions will give you consequence. So there's no escape, right? Does not mean that you surrender to him, all your karmas are burnt instantly. If only it was that easy. If only it was that easy, then it's you know, our journey becomes far more easier, right? So he says, I'm, you know, you surrendering to me, you know, with and worshipping me along with my many attributes. Ultimately, you use all my attributes to come to the attributeless me. You use all the attributes of me to arrive at the attributeless me. That is the true knowledge. That is the jnani who will realize that, right? So you have to use that knowledge. Just because I'm talking to you does not mean you have all that knowledge. You have to actually start thinking, reflecting, practicing, applying. Unless knowledge is applied, it is useless, right? And there's no point repeating what has been said, what has been said, what has been said, what has been said, right? This is a typical phenomena in the world today. Everywhere you go, say, this book, it says this, the Gita says this, Bhagavad Govindam says this. Yeah. What are you doing about it? What are you? Brother, I'm just an individual, you know, look at society. No, I'm looking at you. Each one of you. So stop saying what he had said. Start applying what he has said. It's very simple. Stop preaching what he has said. Start applying so that you can see some transformation. Right? Otherwise, we will go on another, 200 generations also. We're going to say, he said this at this time. 8,000 years ago, Krishna Paramatma took an avatar and he said A, B, C, D, E. What's the point? Right? Look at the number of people. The very fact that the number of people who attempt and succeed in gaining this supreme knowledge, self-realization, Atma Vidya, Atma Vidya. That means the Vidya has come to a point, the crescendo, where it is merged with the Paramatma. Atma and Paramatma have merged. That is what we call Atma Vidya, where the journey of the soul stops. When the journey of the soul stops, your rebirth stops. Okay. Right. So then he talks to him about, when God comes, he has two forms, the lower form and the higher form. Now, Arjuna says, what do you mean lower form, higher form? He says, the highest nature is para prakriti. Para prakriti. And then the lower nature, you have apara prakriti. Para prakriti is higher level of knowledge or higher level of, aspects, highest nature of God. The lower nature, lowest aspect is apara prakriti. So Arjuna says, please explain further. So Krishna says, the lower nature has got 8 divisions. 8 divisions. Yes, 8 divisions. The Panchabhutas plus the cosmic ego plus the cosmic intellect and the unmanifest. That is all the lower nature. 8 divisions that you have to transcend. This is called the lower nature. So Arjuna asks, why is it called the lower nature? It is you anyway. He says the lower nature, because these attributes of mine are constantly changing. They are inert, they are finite, and they are dependently existent. They are dependently existent. That's why they are called the lower nature of my supreme attribute. This is what about the higher nature? The higher nature is the consciousness behind every body, and that alone, Krishna says, that alone sustains the entire creation. This is called a higher level because it is changeless, it is conscious, it is infinite, and it is independently existent, right opposite of lower nature. So Arjuna says, so I can't go straight to the you unless you control your own lower baser instincts, then only you can reach a higher self, isn't it? God is also like that. First, you come to the feet and you work your way up. The moment you touch my feet, I'm already looking at you, right? Then it's a question of you making that extra effort and then me pulling you up as well. But if midway you lose focus and you are deluded by materialistic attractions and you get pulled away, then I can't do anything. Material cause or spiritual cause, something that you have to decide, Jiva and Jagati, you have to decide, I can only come if you invite me. Otherwise, I am there. But unless you call me, I'm unable to respond. You have to call. And you will call if you have sufficient intelligence that has been, what we call trained or manipulated to a level where it only looks at me and not anything else. Okay. That is not impossible, Arjuna, very possible, but you have to be so focused. Just like when you hit the arrow of the fish, the eye of the fish that was going around, what kind of focus you had to hit that eye of the fish? Can you imagine to hit my heart? How much more focus you have to have, Arjuna? Arjuna says, okay, I'm sure I can focus. He says, yeah, but every time you try and focus, Arjuna, Maya will come, right? Maya Devi will come and attract you in different ways to see whether your point of devotion is, unbreakable, whether you're not going off at a tangent, check yourself always. I mean, this is the problem with many people who meditate, right? Remember last week I spoke about meditation. I said, you have to find a place first. All the external requirements must be discharged first before you actually go and sit to meditate. Not after sitting and meditate, you're switching this off or turning that on. I mean, all that is before, right? So Krishna says, so who are these people and what will Maya do? Maya will come through the 3 modes of passion. That is the 3 gunas, right? They are called the power of delusion, the 3 gunas. Unless you are able to transcend and control your 3 gunas, then it's difficult. But I will help. Only those who surrender to me will cross over this ocean of Maya. This Maya Sagara, the ocean of Maya. If you surrender to me, then I'm the boat. Once you're on me, the Maya Sagara won't affect you, right? Because I'm in control of that. But if you're not, and you're moving in and out, Samsara Sagara, Maya Sagara, and Jnana Sagara. See, Samsara Sagara, ocean of life. Maya Sagara, ocean of delusion. And Jnana Sagara, ocean of intellect. Once you jump into the ocean of intellect, that's it. You let yourself go. You don't try and swim. Because the more you swim, the more tired you will get and the quicker you will give up. Once you take a dive into the ocean of knowledge, the Jnana Sagara, surrender. As you are jumping, as you are diving, surrender and say, there's no one except you. And I take over. But if you start swimming, then I'll stand and watch how far you go, right? Then Arjuna asks, how, and everybody can reach you in this way then, if they surrender. And Krishna talks to him. He's talking all this, the different verses from, chapter 7, verse 1 to verse 30. He's telling the lowest, the entire humanity, Arjuna, is divided into 5 groups. The lowest of these non-believers will never be able to reach me. Who are they? They are called Asura Bhava, those people who've got the Asuric qualities. Then he wants to know, who are the others? He said, the others all worship me, but there's something attached to their worship. Pay attention to this, right? Because you may fall into one of these categories. First, he says there are people called the Arthas. Arthas are who? People who worship or go to temple and go to lords or go to gurus when they have a problem, when they are in a state of distress. Anyada sharanam nasti. Come to you, surrender. Arthas. Then you have the Artharthis, the second or the third category, right? Artharthis, who are one who continuously worship, the devotion is there, consistent, but it is for materialistic ends, material prosperity. Artharthis, but they also surrender, right? You want to know who surrenders? I'm telling you. Arthas, only when problem comes, they come to you. I mean, you must have many friends, only they call you when they have problem, right? Like that. Arthas are people who go and fall at the feet of the Lord, or go to the temple, or go in search of solutions when they have problems, or state of distress. Artharthis, I will continue to do this, Lakshmi Puja every Friday without fail, because Mata Lakshmi will give me money, materialistic. Then you have someone called Jignasu. These are the Jnanis, the Jnanic level, the base level of Jnanis. They have got, they are discriminative enough to discern the limitation of everything else. And when they understand the limitation of everything else, they go within and seek the knowledge. Jignasu. And then you have the Jnanis, one who has reached the destination of his life by discovering the identity within. Who's within? The Lord. Antakarana Purusha. This is the one inside. That's why I said, if you cannot recognize the divinity inside you, then it's a more cumbersome journey for you. So how do I recognize the divinity in me? Recognize that the same divinity exists in everybody else. But he's a bad fellow. That's not your call. He's a bad fellow. Let him pay his karma. For you, recognize that the Lord is in him. Once you start recognizing the Lord is in everybody, then that thing comes back to you. Everybody will recognize that the Lord is in you, and you too will realize it after a while. So there is no problem. And Krishna says, these are the superior wise men who become my devotees, where their devotion can see the distinction between the permanent, and therefore it is undivided. Otherwise, you're just, one side permanent, one side impermanent. You're sitting on the fence, right? You don't have a dualistic notion. You are singular in your devotion. You are singular in your devotion. That means you have a specific target and you're focused on that target, Then he says, if people do that, how would you respond? So Arjuna is asking all this, right? The Lord said, when you come to me, naturally I will also take some steps toward you, isn't it? Because I am a Bhakta Vatsala. My name, one of my names, O Arjuna, is Bhakta Vatsala. That means I am the one who saves my Bhakta, provided my Bhakta surrenders to me. Then yes, I am, But for that, you must have complete vision. Complete vision means complete surrender. Finish. That's it. Then Arjuna asks, what about those people who worship you, but then, they're not worshiping you fully because they are still, one foot is still, in the materialistic world. Well, then I will give them what they want because that's what they're asking me, right? They are asking me for something. They are not asking for me. I'll repeat this. They are asking me for something, but they're not asking for me. That's the difference, Arjuna. I said, oh my God, He says, even to want me, you must have compassion in your heart. But you want everything else from me except me. Now, when I do the acronym for chapter 7, I'll talk about this in a bit more detail, right? Then he talks about the stages of devotion to Arjuna. He said, you know what is bhakti? Satkama bhakti, nishkama bhakti. Let me explain to you. He said, there are people who at different levels of their life, they have a clear choice of where they want to go and how they should, pursue that life. All that life's ends. And this is where they make the wrong choice because they look for the temporary and not the permanent. See, how do we get to know what is temporary and what is permanent? Well, whatever you can get in this material world is temporary. Whatever it may be, very temporary. Whatever you seek in the spiritual world, if tirelessly you are focused and your perseverance and your determination is undisturbed, unperturbed, then you will get it, and that is permanent. Coming to me and merging with me is permanent. Coming out of me and going into me is impermanent. This is the cycle of birth and death, Arjuna. Now, that is what I am telling you. Your duty is to do, not worry about the fruits, because I am telling you to do. Remember, we looked at the doers, DOERS, last week for the acronym, right? So, what is the acronym for chapter 7? What is this on your shoulder? Your head. HEAD. That is the acronym, right? Hearing. H for hearing. E is for sarvam, everywhere. A, up to you to accept or reject me. This is what Krishna has been telling in chapter 7. The Jnana Vijnana Yoga is telling you, use your Jnana to transcend Vijnana and come to me. So whether you accept or reject, it's entirely up to you. So D is for devolution or evolution through worship. Worship me, worship other things, worship other demigods. You'll get the result. So let's take each one of this, right? First is hearing. Hearing is Shravanam. Remember, I spoke to you about the Nava-Vida Bhakti, the 9 paths of devotion. I said the first path of devotion and the most potent is something called Shravanam. This is Krishna telling Arjuna, when I speak, you listen intentfully because I am the authority. Ekam Sat, that is the only truth that you need to know. This is the Lord talking to Arjuna himself. Now, let me ask you, how many of us actually listen when, God is talking to us in different ways, through different people? How many of us actually listen? Swami has so many times we've sat down and listened to Swami's discourses, right? How much of it have we listened? More than that, how much of it have we applied? And how much of the application has shown itself? That's the revelation, right? You see, the problem is we look, but we don't see. We look ephemerally, right? Limited vision. So we don't see beyond. We talk, but we don't speak. We listen, but we don't hear. We think, but we don't feel. We look, but we don't see. We talk, but we don't speak. We listen, but we don't hear. We think, but we don't feel. Then how can we reach him? When the very faculties he has given us to reach him, we are not using in the right way. Right? So he begins chapter 7, the first verse. It says, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Shaktamana Partha Yogam Yunjan Mat Ashrayaha Asan Shayam Samagramam Yatha Nyas Yashi Tachrinu. He's telling Madashraya. Madashraya means your mind. Mat means don't, isn't it? Ashraya means do not lose focus. Be one-pointed. Be always focused on me. And Shrinu is listen. How do you have, unwavering focus? You listen to everything. There you go. Chapter 7, verse 1. He's telling Shravanam. First in the Navavidha Bhakti. If you don't do anything else, just listening and listening and listening, and then obviously absorbing, applying, translating, transforming. That should be the journey, right? So Krishna says, okay, if I listen, how do I get this knowledge of the Supreme Brahman? Krishna says, okay, let me tell you, there are 3 ways you can get supreme knowledge. One is called Pratyaksha Praman. That means through science, where you use your jnana, intellect, to transcend the scientific boundaries or borders, and then you go across the limitations of the mind. Then you will come to me. That is Pratyaksha Praman. The other is called Anumana Praman. Anumana Praman, where you make conclusion based on assumptions. People always say that, isn't it? Famously in Hindi, they say, Aisa bhi, Vaisa bhi, Jaisa bhi, Sab kuch bhi. Right? So conclusions, but based on assumptions. It is Anumana Praman. Why is it like this? Could it be like that? Could it be like this? All assumptions. And then, of course, Arjuna says, what is the third way? The third way is Shabda Praman. Pratyaksha Praman, Anumana Praman, and the third way is Shabda Praman. Shabda Praman is through listening or hearing. Nothing else is needed. Remember, I said to you, Parikshit Maharaj, right? I said to you when I did Bhaja Govindam, I said to you when I did Karma, now I'm saying to you again when I'm doing Bhaja Govindam, Bhagavad Gita, through listening. He just listened to Sukha Maharishi, right, on Srimad Bhagavatam. And when he died, completely, because that one focus, Mat Ashraya Tachrinu, he did that. So there you go. That formula has now been given to us. So if I listen with intent, that's it. Because when you listen with intent, it gives you knowledge. When it gives you knowledge, it enhances your faith. When it enhances your faith, you are continuously and consistently remembering. Remember Prahlada. You tell me one moment in his life, from the time that he was in the womb of his mother, all he heard was Narayanaya Namaha. Narayanaya Namaha. That was him. Anytime, every time, all the time, that remembrance is there. Right? Shraddha, faith, comes from knowledge. Knowledge comes from listening. Right? So there we are. So that's H, hearing. How important hearing is in becoming more devotion based. Everywhere. Right? Everywhere. I am everywhere. So when you listen to me, you should listen with intent, because I am speaking to you. How? I am speaking to you to the Panchabhutas. I am speaking through you to the sun, through the rain, through the air, through the moon, through the water, through the space, through the earth. He's telling Arjuna, chapter 7, verse 4, he said, Bhumir apo nalo vayu khammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhina prakritir ashtadha. He's saying these are the 8 things. Remember I said 8 things, ashtadha. Prakritir ashtadha. Earth, water, fire, air, space, mind, intellect, ego. 8. These are the 8 components of my material energy. Now let me talk to you about science. material energy we're talking about, right? Now, all of you know Albert Einstein, right? Einstein actually was the first to propound the concept of mass energy equivalence. You know, if you look at his early in the 1900s, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it is 1905, you know, where in his Annus Mirabilis papers, you know, he presents papers every year. He stated that it is possible to convert mass into energy, and he went a little bit further, and he also presented that famous equation, isn't it? E equals mc squared. This is Einstein in 1905. But 10, 15 years later, two other physicists, right? Two other scientists, Niels Bohr and another German scientist, right? They challenged Albert Einstein and said, no, because they came up with a quantum theory which proposes a dual particle wave nature of matter. A dual particle wave nature of matter. They said, no, your theory can't be true. Now, ever since that, you know, Einstein's theory has been challenged but not disproven. Niels' theory has been accepted but not disputed. Okay. Anyway, ever since then, the scientific community, right, including NASA, they're still researching on this, right? I mean, they came up with so many things, the Big Bang theory and all of that, but they are still trying to find out. This scientific theory is trying to find out a single field, or what we call a UFT, a unified field theory. Now, this I'm talking about pure science, right? Unified field theory, which could expound the relationship between matter and all forces of the universe. 8,000 years ago, Krishna had come down and he's telling Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where the battle between the constant forces of the good and the constant forces of the evil, right? He's telling Arjuna, look, Bhumi Rapo Nalo Vayu Kammano Buddhi Revacha Ahankara Ityam Me Vina Pratidir Rashtada. He's telling all this come from me, right? He's telling Arjuna, all that exists in this universe has manifested from me, and what manifests out of me further manifests into a myriad of shapes, forms, entities. And actually, I've done some research on this. The Taittiriya Upanishad also says the same thing about what Krishna had said. So, the unseen, listen to me very carefully. The unseen is proven by the seen through the cause and effect theory. The unseen is proven by the seen through the cause and effect theory. Right? So you can see many people have come up with many theories, but have they actually seen that? You know, have they actually seen? Many talk about this bacteria and that bacteria, but they have actually seen that bacteria. It is a scientific discovery. Here we have Krishna telling Arjuna, I am all. Right? If you look at the Purusha Suktam, that's what he says. Right? Purusha evedagam sarvam yad bhudam yad chabhavyam uthamritatvasyesanaha. All is me, all comes of me, all goes back to me, all comes out of me again. The Sangulam, you know, this everything that you see is only the length of my smallest finger. Arjuna then asks, Krishna says, I am all over the place. Ishvara sarvam jagat. I am there, I'm everywhere. Then Arjuna says, then why are so many people in denial of the Supreme Lord? Actually, that's very true. If you go back 8,000 years, there were people denying. Right? The very Kauravas refused to believe Krishna was God. But he never showed them because it was not. He only showed to two people at the end of the day, right? One was Karna, and the other fellow was Bhishma. Right? And of course, he gave Jnana Drishti to Sanjaya, so that he could see what's happening and narrate it to Dhritarashtra. So he says, that's me. Then Arjuna says, so why are people denying that you are who you say you are? And he says, because I can only give you jnana. How you exercise that jnana, whether you accept me or reject me, right? In six verses, he's telling Arjuna this. He said, everyone is covered by my Maya. It's modern magic. You go and watch a modern magic show, you believe, wow, magic, isn't it? Fantastic. But does that really happen? No. Of course, you know, when you put someone in a box and you saw the box and they become half and they join, of course, it's not realistic. It is a mystical thing. You know, that's why it's called magic. That is Maya. You accept magic as magic, but you don't accept that my Maya exists in this Bhuloka? How is that possible? He says, Tribir Gunamayat Bhaver Evi Sarvam Midam Jagat Mohitam Nabijanathi Mamebhya Paramavyayam. Paramavyayam, he says. Deluded by the three modes, right? Tribhir Guna Maye. Maye. Ma ye. Ma means not. Like, in Hindi we say mat. Right? Choot mat bholo, we say. Don't lie like that. Mat means it's not. And ya means what is. So ma ya means it is not what it seems to be. It is an illusion. When you get attracted by illusion, you become disillusioned. So simple, isn't it? Maya is also interpreted as that which is not what it appears to be. That is Maya. Look beyond. That's why it says you need to look beyond. Right? But Maya is my first shield. You defeat that shield, then you have different vision of me. Until then, you have to only try and surrender. So when Krishna talks about surrender, Arjuna asks, who surrenders to you then? Arjuna asks, who surrenders to you, Bhagavan? So Krishna says, okay, Arjuna, I will tell you. There are 4 kinds of people who do not surrender to me. Number 1, they are called Mudas. Muda, Jahihi, Danagama Krishnam. He says, oh fool, the fool who wallows in material world. He does not surrender to me. The Naradharmas, those who are uncivilized with no morals at all, they do not surrender to me. But there are also intellects. That's the 3rd category. Maya ya prithanyanaha. These people are highly intellectual, but their high intellect is tagged to a materialistic agenda. Therefore, they too do not surrender to me because they have surrendered to the materialistic agenda. So who? Let me tell you about the last category. These are the fellows who are called the Asura Bhavam. Asuram Bhava Ashritaha. These are demons with demonic or evil qualities. Deva Guna, Asura Guna. Chapter 16, I'll be talking about this, right? But this is just an intro. He talks about Deva Guna, Asura Guna. Deva Guna 1 means Asura Guna 10. They'll have like that. So they're completely, completely bamboozled into this life of demonic life. And he says, my God, Bhagavan, who surrenders to you then? Again, I tell you about 4 categories of people who surrender. One is Artha. Remember, I said the distressed. The distressed surrender to me, but this is incomplete surrender. Right? When they face problems. And if that incomplete surrender has got some bhakti in it, then I will solve their problem to some extent, but they have to go through their karma. Then the Artharthis, the ones with desires, outer level devotion. Oh my Lord, please, I'm buying 6 numbers. Please make me strike the lottery, make me pass my exams, make me get a good proposal for marriage. All these are called Artharthis. Their devotion, they will do pujas, they will do, meditation, they will do bhajans, they will do kirtans, they will do everything because they want to achieve something. That's why Krishna says, everybody asks of me, but nobody asks for me. Then the jignasus, the curious, the truth seekers, the discriminative ones, who then grow on to become the jnanis, those in search of the absolute knowledge. Then he talks about D. The last one, D. D is devolution or evolution. I've given you a life, right? Whether you devolve into a better human being or you devolve into an asura, that will determine the outcome of your next life. Worship me or worship thee. The gurus, so many gurus have come and have given us so many beautiful ways in which we can shapen our lives. But yet we go on looking for people, other, masters, so to speak, who will mislead us into different paths. Right? Like Krishna says, you only need one guru. If you think you need more than one guru, that means your devotion to that one guru has got no faith. Okay, so that head, H-E-A-D, hearing everywhere, accept or reject, and devolution or evolution. That is the summary of chapter 7. Now let's go to chapter 8. Chapter 8 is called Akshara Brahma Yoga, attaining the supreme. You see, I told you before, right? It is a beautifully executed theory that, if practiced, will lead you straight to him. From chapter 1 to chapter 2, everything is connected like a bridge. A bridge over troubled waters. That is what the Bhagavad Gita is. If you ask me to define what the Gita is, it is a bridge over troubled waters. Tread it and you will surmount your troubles. So Akshara Brahma Yoga, he said knowledge of the absolute in chapter 7. Now he says how to attain the supreme. Knowledge of the absolute supreme in chapter 7. In chapter 8 is telling how to attain this supreme. That's why it's called Akshara Brahma Yoga. 28 verses. And he talks about Brahman and the difference between right and wrong, discrimination. Viveka, he talks about Viveka here. So this chapter starts with Arjuna asking 7 questions. Then Krishna gives him a response, the answers to those questions. Then Arjuna says, how do you remember God? If you don't know when you are going to die, how do you remember God at the time of death? Fantastic, right? If you really want more detail, you go and see chapter 8, verses 5 to verse 14. Chapter 8, verse 5 to verse 14. It talks about how to remember God at the time of death. But then I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to tell you, it's not just when you're dying, you suddenly remember God. You cannot remember God all the time. If all the time you haven't thought of him, suddenly that wisdom is not going to come at the last perilous hour. If all the time you've been thinking, Ishvara, 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 then of course, time of death also Ishvara. Right? I'll tell you a story of Maharaj Bharat, what happened to him, and how at the time of death he thought about something, and how that impacted his karma in terms of next life. Then Arjuna says, okay, so there are basically 2 types of people, one who are attached to the world and one who are attached to God. Yes? Krishna talks about him. In 7 verses, he talks about the difference between 2 types of goals. Either you want to achieve God or you want to achieve all the material things in the world. And to that end, he talks about the bright path, Uttarayan, and the dark path, Dakshinayanam. Right? Now we are in the 6 months of Dakshinayanam. In January, of course, in January after 14th, the new moon comes, that is Uttarayan, And so many festivals are associated with the Uttarayan. Even the great Bhishma, Pitama, he chose Uttarayan to leave because, he had the wonderful gift of choosing the moment when he has the right to say, now is when I want to leave. So he chose that moment, Uttarayan, to leave this life. Then he talks about Upasana. He finishes this chapter by talking about Upasana, practice. And how, because this practice, if done properly and religiously, it will lead you to Brahma. So it's called Akshara Brahma Yoga, attaining the supreme. So Arjuna starts by asking him, you've spoken to me about Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti, and how to remember God all the time. But how does one remember God at the time of death? And before you answer that question, I've got 7 other questions. He says, what is Brahman? What is Adhyatma? What is Karma? What is Adi Bhutha? What is Adi Deva? And what is Adi Yajna? And how to remember God at the time of death. I've got 7 questions for you. So Krishna says, yes. What do you want to know? Brahman. Brahma, Brahman, Brahmam, right? Brahma is the God of that creativity. So constant, continuous prayer to Brahma through his Shaktic force, Saraswati, will lead you beyond Brahma to Brahman. Just put an N at the Brahma, it becomes Brahman. And if you don't, then you become Brahmam. Take out the N and put an M. Brahmam. That means basically you're dead, right? That is Brahman, the imperishable truth. Adhyatma is the same. Same Brahman inside you is the same Brahman. That's Adhyatma. Adhyatma Antara. And it's in you. It's in everybody. Right? Karma, you know it. Right? That which when done comes back in the same equal force. Force of thought, force of words, force of actions, right? That is the deciding factor behind the birth of all beings. Adi Bhutha, the entire perishable Bhutha, inert universe. Adi Deva is the primary, the Hiranyagarbha, who blesses all the organs of all the peoples, Hiranyagarbha, right? There is one mantra in the temples. A learned priest will chant this when they want to bless you with good health. They will say the Hiranyagarbha Sutra, right? Most won't know because it is a higher level of knowledge. And when you're training to be a priest, this is not taught to you as part of the curriculum, okay? Adi Yajna is the Lord, is the presiding deity of all actions of the individual. Just like Yajna, the Agni Deva is the presiding deity. Whatever you offer, he is the presiding deity. Likewise, Adi Deva is another name for Adi Yajna, right? So he talks about this in greater detail. So Arjuna asks, okay, you've explained these 6 concepts. What about how do I remember God? He says, before you go there, let me talk to you about these 7 first, right? If a person yearns for Lord at the time of death, right, then his rebirth will be conducive to that end, but he may not be born with that knowledge. So, but you're put in the place, but you still have to make the journey, I'll tell you the story of Maharaj Bharat shortly, right? He said those who are what we call Sadguna Upasakas, they will go to Brahmaloka because they will get Brahmanyana and they'll go to Brahmaloka, the creator, right? This is also called the path of Krama Mukti, right? But the thought pattern at the time of death is determined by the predominant thought pattern throughout one's life. The thought pattern at the time of death is verily determined by the predominant thought pattern throughout one's life. Right? I think I may have mentioned before that is one reason why, as far as Hindus are concerned, all the names take after some form of God. Krishna, Vasudeva, Bharata, Ganesha, Subramanya, Kartik, all these names. So even if you are calling the name without actually thinking about God, at that moment when your life departs, when your soul leaves your bodily life, at that point you've mentioned God's name. So that will have some good returns for you, right? It's all investment. But if you live your entire life all the time thinking of God, Ishvara, Parameshwara, Rama, Krishna, all the time you're saying, then definitely you don't have to worry. Even at the time of death, you'll be saying that only. Isn't it? Isn't it so? Right? If you've been thinking about everything and everything else, then how, when you come to that point in time, only you can think of God? You can't, because your thought is already, wallowing in that cycle, right? So Krishna says, in order to do that, you have to go into upasana. Arjuna, you have to do upasana. Practice, constant practice. What? Swami has said, in the Kali Yuga, the easiest upasana is Bhakti Yoga. In Bhakti Yoga, the easiest path is Namasmarana. Namasmarana, continuously, engaging in the repetition of God's name. Krishna said it to Arjuna 8,000 years ago, but okay, right, fine. We were not there, so we don't know what we are reading. We never understand. That's fine. Swami has said it in this age where we are living, right? Many times he has referred to this as a golden age. Because you are living in the same era as the divine incarnation. And Krishna, you see how Krishna talks to him about the nadis, 3 nadis, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Sushumna is the one that comes from your, what you call your Kundalini at the base chakra, which is your Mooladhara chakra, and it goes all around. It just connects to every chakra until it comes to your Agnya, right? And the Ida and Pingala goes around. If you see the medical symbol, right? The caduceus, it's called, right? You will see 2 snakes going around a middle object. The middle object is the Sushumna Nadi. This Krishna is telling Arjuna. You want upasana? Let me tell you. Your three nadis, Sushumna is the central one. Ida and Pingala will go around it. Likewise, these three nadis also control your thought, your word, and your actions. Contract your prana. That means breathing, breathing control. Regulation of breathing. Pranayama. Pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Remember I said to the Ashtanga Yoga when I did Dhyana Yoga with you, chapter 6, right? Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Ashtanga Yoga, 8 stages. If you want to remember God, then you must control your breath. In fact, you can release your breath when you want it. That is how powerful you are. If you know how to, contract the Sushumna from continuing to be active, then you can end your life the moment you choose. And Arjuna is saying, but that will be very difficult for me to do. That will be very difficult for me to do because we are already human. He says, okay, I give you an easier way, right? You are living in this world. You always have two choices, two disciplines. One is the material discipline, one is the spiritual discipline, right? You always choose, isn't it, Arjuna? Whether you want to do this, you want to do that, you want to go for this, go for that, like this person, dislike this person. So you must choose, am I living this life so that I get everything in this material world, or am I living this life so that I'm going in the spiritual path, right? No one, and Krishna tells Arjuna, no one can put an end to the cycle of birth and death by reaching higher lokas or by acquiring better bodies. That's why there are 7 lokas: Bhuloka, Bhuvaloka, Suvaloka, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Ohum Loka. So maybe you can go to Bhuloka to Bhuvaloka, but you are stuck there because of this, right? Even Brahma, the creator, the longest duration of his life, right? One day is like 2000 Chatur Yugas. Chatur Yugas are the 4 yugas. 2000 Chatur Yugas means you can imagine, right? Even Brahma, the creator, is not free from this finitude. So what more you, man? God alone is the eternal and the changeless. Ekam Sat. Again he tells Arjuna, I am your only one and only center of surrender. I am the imperishable. I am the supreme goal of everybody's life. But nobody wants that. Nobody is allowing that to happen, right? So he says, Upasaka attains krama mukti, like krama mukti, by departing through the bright path. It's called Shukla Gati. The Shukla Gati is presided over by deities of fire, Agni, daytime, and bright fortnight. It's called Uttarayanam, right? Once you practice this bright path, Shukla Gati, you go to Brahmaloka. You become self-knowledgeable, you become self-aware, and that's it. You become liberated. Ritualists, Upasaka, bright path. Ritualistic people, they go by the dark path. It's called Krishna Gati. Shukla Gati, Krishna Gati. And this is presided over by the deities of smoke. From fire comes smoke, right? This is the opposite. Night and dark fortnight. And this is called Dakshinayanam. So they will go to some extent, but they will come back because the cycle of birth and death has not been traversed properly. That is why even you go to the priests and the month is divided into 2 halves. One is called Sukla Paksha. That means, yesterday was Paurnami. So the next 14 days is called Shukla Paksha, and then when it goes to the Shukla Paksha is the time of the dark moon to the bright moon. And then from the bright moon to the dark moon is called Krishna Paksha, the dark phase, right? So the what do you call Shukla Paksha ended with Paurnami, and then the dark phase, the Krishna Paksham starts. That's called the different tithis, right? You do different things. So as an upasaka, it's better because you go through the bright path. You are assisted by Agni. Agni is fire. Fire is knowledge. Knowledge gives jnana, brightness. And that is why Bhishma chose that. So Krishna says, you have to do certain things even though it is difficult. Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have to do certain things even though it's difficult. So what is the message for us now? Right? We have so much, we live with so much of creature comforts. So technically it should be easier, isn't it? So Arjuna is still asking, so how do I do this upasana? He says, you can take upasana, you can become a upasaka by taking upanayana. Upanayana is taking, or seeking a guru. The guru will give you the upasaka path, the path. Then once you get the path from the guru, then it's Jivan Mukti. Because remember, this is Akshara Brahma Yoga, right? He's telling how to get that knowledge to transcend basic knowledge boundaries to go into scientific boundaries, then transcending that scientific boundaries, and then you are there in Brahma Loka, right? So what is the acronym for chapter 8? Earlier I said to you, head, isn't it? H-E-A-D, right? This is dead, D-E-A-D. That is the acronym. D is for doubt. E is for end of life. A is for attaining the supreme. And D is devotion. D, doubt. E, end of life. A, attaining the supreme. And D, devotion. So let's talk about D first, doubt. Remember, Arjuna started chapter 8 with asking him all these 8 questions. What is Brahma? What is Karma? What is Adi Atma, Adi Bhuta, Adi Deva, Adi Yajna? And how do we realize this? And I want to know how to remember God at the time of death. So Krishna says, what is Brahma? What is Adi Atma? What is Karma? What is Adi Bhuta, Adi Deva, Adi Yajna? And he says, look, if I am telling you I am Adi Deva, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Bhoktharam, Yajna Tapasam, then what is your problem, Arjuna? Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Ishwaram Jagat. I am this, I am that, and I am everything. Right? He says, isn't it? Ishvara Sarvabhutanam. Right? Everywhere you see it's me. Remember I said to you, I can't remember when, but I said this to you at one point in time. I am Atma Gudakesha, Sarvabhudasya Stitaha, Aham Adischa, Madhyancha, Bhutanam Andayevacha. I am in everything. I am the beginning, I am the middle, and even the end. That's me. This is the Lord saying. So how can we distinguish and discriminate people? Everything is there. Then he comes, then you come to from D, doubt, you come to E, end of life. Krishna has been asked by Arjuna, how do you remember God at the end of life? And direct response, right? Chapter 8, verse 5. If you see, Krishna is telling, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah pratyatisa madbhavam yadi nastyasta samsayaha. Those who relinquish the body whilst remembering me, at the moment of death will come to me. There is no doubt about this. Yati nastyatra sansayaha. The path of your journey definitely will lead you to me if at the time of death you verily remember me and nothing else but me. Right? I mean, the principle of that one's next birth is determined by one state of mind conscious at the time of death, and what your mind is obsessed with or absorbed with. That's what we're looking at here. Remember I said, even he goes on 8.5, he talks about ante kalevaram, and then 8.6 say yam yam api smaran bhavam tijante kalevaram tam tam evati kaunteya sadathat bhava bhavitha sadathat bhava bhavitha. That means he's saying, one who remembers me when they are giving up the body at the time of death, O son of Kunti, tam tam evati kaunteya. Remember that, O son of Kunti, that one attains that state of merging with me when one is only absorbed in such contemplation of me. There you go. That's the secret. The secret has now been given to you. If you think of me and only me at the time of death, I will surely come to you. You will surely come to me. But you cannot suddenly, just before you die, suddenly think of God. Throughout your life, you have to be thinking of me. Then it becomes a practice. Then it's not a problem, isn't it? I mean, this is the Maharaj Bharat story, right? He was a king, but he renounced his kingdom and he went to live in the forest as an ascetic. So because he wanted to become a Jignasu, and then from Jignasu become a Jnani. right? Knowledge of the absolute. Now, again, he was very firmly attached to his task, daily task of remembering God and doing things to remember God. But one day, he saw a pregnant deer jump into the water. When the pregnant deer was walking, it heard a tiger roar. When it heard the tiger roar, out of fright, it jumped into the water, right? And it didn't want to come out of the water. This king, Maharaj Bharat, was watching, right? Out of fear, the pregnant deer delivered the baby deer that began to float in the water. It discharged the baby. Baby came out and it was floating on the water. Now, this king felt pity on that baby deer and he rescued it. Mother died, right? The mother deer died. So he took this baby and he took it to his hut and he began to rear it. He began to bring up the deer, and he became so attached to the deer that he would feed it. And slowly he began to get detached from what he was doing all the time. And he became so attached to this little deer. It grew up and his affection grew and grew and grew. And finally, at the moment of death, he asked for this deer. Where is this deer? Where is this deer? So what happened was, in his next life, he became a deer. But because of his connection, remember, he was already an ascetic on the way to God, but he was temporarily set back by this deer, isn't it? So he was given the birth of a deer because that was the last thing on his mind. But he was born as a deer near an ashram of a rishi. So constantly he had that, listening to all these divine things, even though as a deer. You see, that's already him helping you to go nearer to him. So subsequently, he, in his next life, he became a deer, but because of that proximity to God in his previous life, he was born as a deer to nearby to an ashram, and all the saintly people who were doing so many things, yajnas, havans, homas, and this deer was, all privy to all of this. And finally, when he gave up the deer body, he was given another human birth, and this time he was born as a sage called Jagat Bharat. He was Bharat king, then he became a deer. Then, because the path was still the same, although body is a different body, right? From king to ascetic, ascetic to deer, deer to jnani. Jagat Bharat, and of course, he completed his sadhana. So the point is, once you have got that path, right? This is called anusmarana. Anusmarana means continuous remembering, and abhyasa. Abhyasa means the mind fixed. Continuous remembering with your mind fixed on God will definitely take you to him. Definitely take you to him. That's the E. DE. A is attaining the supreme. Arjuna asks how. He says 3 ways. Chakra yoga, Sat Chakra yoga, 6 chakras, right? Sahasra, forget about that. You can't touch that, because the moment you activate your 6, the moment your Ajna is activated, Sahasra blooms, right? 1,000 petal lotus. So he says, practice Sat Chakra yoga, number 1. Second, if you think that is difficult, practice Bhakti yoga. And if you can't, then make sure when you compare the materialistic world with the spiritual world, make sure you are in the spiritual world, not in the materialistic world. I've given you 3 paths now. You ask me how to attain the supreme here. Akshara Brahma Yoga, either Sat Chakra Yoga. How to do Sat Chakra Yoga? Well, you have to raise your life, your prana, from your Kundalini right up to your Ajna Chakra by chanting Om continuously. Krishna is telling Arjuna to chant Om. Now, how many times Swami has told us to chant Om? Right? This is Krishna, chapter 8, verse 11, if you want to check it out, right? Then he says, renounce all types of sense gratification, 8:11, 8:12. All types of sense gratification you got to give up and fix your mind firmly on the heart where I live, 8:12. Arjuna says, oh my God, that sounds so difficult. Let me give you an easier way, Arjuna. Bhakti Yoga. Why? Because it brings peace. But even then, you can do Bhakti Yoga based on your own needs, isn't it? You see, all karmis will pray to me and surrender to me because they want sense-based or materialistic gratification. Jnanis will come to me because they want to be released from material misery. They want liberation and oneness with God. Yogis, they want mystic or siddhic powers from me. They will come and worship me. And of course, the last category is pure devotees. They only want me, Krishna. Right? And there's a story in Mahabharata once where Krishna was feeling a little bit unwell. So, all the, Nakula, Sahadeva all came to try and cure him because, they were the sons of the Ashwinis. So they had all the medicinal knowledge, right? They were a gift from Dhanvantari. They knew all the medicinal things. Even that couldn't cure. So finally, Veda Vyasa came and said, go and corner a few gopikas, right? And wipe the dust of their feet and bring it and rub on him. So they went, they stopped a few gopikas who were riding the, gopis, they with all the cows all the time, they play the flute, so all the time they are singing. So caught them, wiped the dust of their feet, collected the dust, came and wiped it on Krishna. Instantly he became well. He said, these, my pure devotees, at the end of the day, only they come to me through Bhakti Yoga. They don't pray, they don't do all these rituals, but their thoughts are constantly on me, and on me constantly their thoughts are finished. In the end, they come to me because all the time they're thinking of me. So when they die, they think of me, they come. Right? If all the time you don't think of me, see, even then he gives you hope. He says, if all the time you don't think of me, but at the time of death you think of me, next birth you'll be a bit more closer to me. Then you must make effort in that birth. Like the Maharaj Bharat story I told you. Right? If you think Chakra Yoga is difficult, Bhakti Yoga is difficult, then I give you the answer is in the material world. Don't live in the material world. Move in the material world, live in a spiritualistic manner. How? The last word, D. D-E-A-D. Devotion. Be simple. Be honest. Serve others happily as though you're serving me. And devotion without any exception to anyone. No class, no creed, no language, nothing. You transcend. Your love transcends. Your devotion transcends everything. That's why Swami said, duty is devotion, work is worship. When you do that, that's it. You come to me at the end of the day. Because by serving, Manava Seva is Madhava Seva. Jana Seva is Janardana Seva. Anyada Sharanam Nasti. That's it. I have no other but you to surrender to. Then you will reach me. And that, Arjuna, that is the only way. Part of devotion. And that ends chapter 8 with that. So, Anyada Sharanam Nasti Tvameva Sharanam Mama Tasmat Karunya Bhavena Raksha Maheshwara.